fantastic, wasn't it? I'm a little bit nervous. Reason being, I thought Hannah was going to be using that fruit over there. I thought it was going to be some sort of prop. So now I'm doing what on earth that's... Is there? No, it's fine. It's fine. Don't look at the fruit. So I've got a couple of confessions to make. First off, I'm a little bit tired. We've got a lot of work on at the moment, reason being. There's a lot of things to be done to get ready for next year, to get ready for this mobile web. Second confession, and some of the eagle eyes amongst you might notice I've had a bit of a maths fail. When Gianluca said to me, you know, what do you want to talk about? I said, definitely mobile index, definitely mobile index. It's all we're doing at the moment. What's the title? 10 things we're doing for the mobile first index. These are the things that we're checking. And then I've come to like write my notes up, and I'm like, I have 9 of the things. Where is the 10th thing? What is the 10? So confession, that's HTTPS. Basically, we're just post. We're in a post-HTTPS world. If we're not there and you haven't done that yet, the web is going to kind of break for you in 2018. And a lot of things will not work, progressive web apps and various other things. HTTP2 will not work very well for you. So I'm just assuming that we're all HTTPS. Okay, I'm sorry about that. So, I'm being a little bit reflective actually. I've been working in digital comms now for about, actually exactly 20 years, not about, I know how old I am, unfortunately. So 20 years in digital comms, and at that time, in fact 98, so by the time we get around to a mobile first index, Google has been around for 20 years. So I actually started working when we used Monster as a search engine and Excite. But the reason I mention this is because I think this is like the single biggest step change to the index that I've seen in my career. And I think it's kind of funny to imagine that in like 3 or 5 years, I'm going to be hiring people who couldn't imagine a world when an index would work on prioritising anything in any other way. So because of that, what I've done in terms of my slides, I've chosen a bit of a theme, and I've stuck with the space theme from Gianluca, and I've included space movies of the 1998. So, if you want to play along, there are 5 space movies of the 1998 in the background. So if you're more of a content person like Hannah and the technical is just like boring for you, you've got something to do as well. So as I say, next year we'll see the mobile index. I reckon it'll be about June-ish, hopefully, because that's sort of what we're scheduling for with all of our work. So fingers crossed. One of the key things that I think we really need to take away from the messaging, so this is like November last year, is that user experience is at the forefront of all of this. And what I'm going to do is take us through some of the more kind of user experience focused changes and checks that we're doing and the work that we've got on the cards at the media group. I think there's a natural human sort of intrinsic thing within us that makes us kind of naturally resistant to change, and we tend to put off things that we know are a little bit outside of the ordinary. For good reason, it's just unnatural to us. But this is our single biggest opportunity to really get ahead of our competitors. Reason being, so many people are way, way behind when it comes to not just being mobile ready or being mobile first or call it whatever you want, but offering a really, really good mobile experience, which of course is lightning fast, designed and optimized for a mobile experience. But we're going to go through some details in a second. But I want to just put that in context by sharing some actual data. So this is a little bit old, well it's not that old actually, September 16, data from DoubleClick, obviously owned by Google. If we imagine that, so here we've got like 0 seconds on the 3G network, which, you know, if you live and work in London then you're cool, but not everybody does. And then we've got like ad infinitum at the top here. Around 19 seconds is average load time for a web page. but around 3 seconds is average fuck off time. So it's not just about that, you've got 3 seconds to impress someone with your message, no. It's you've got 3 seconds or somebody has gone. So it's much more serious than that. There's a huge amount of space here in the middle. So there's a huge amount of opportunity for us to make improvements now in all of these areas, to enable us to close that gap. So improve our rankings, obviously get more traffic, but most importantly, I think conversions. So let's go on to our 9 things, and the first of which, I know this is like a moment, but the first is to really check how you're handling for both agents and real humans as well. And this, I mean, this sounds so obvious, but I want to give you an example as to why. So we've recently inherited a client that we're working with, and in all of our meetings, whenever we're sat around, we've got a couple of devices on our meeting tables. We've got the meeting iPad, and we all have phones, because, you know, millennials and that. So we're constantly referring to these screens and these devices. And we have a client that we're working with, and they say that they're fully responsive site, and we sit there and we're talking, and we're like, it's fully responsive, this is amazing. We then discovered, through further analysis and through further audit processes, that actually it's not fully responsive because it gets to a certain resolution, and then it goes dynamic. And this was a massive surprise to literally everyone, including a lot of the development team. This is a huge site, some of you will have seen it before. But anything sort of like iPhone 5-ish, that sort of really small resolution, and it just flips to a /mobile directory. So that puts some, you know, put some projects back a few months, let's say. So please don't make any assumptions, check everything. If you haven't got access to a device, if you haven't got a device like yourselves, and you know, there's plenty around that you can hire, and you can go and spend a few hours in just literally moving from station to station, which is lots and lots of fun. So that's pretty straightforward, but you know, as I say, I don't want anybody to be making assumptions. If you have a responsive site, you've got little to great news. If it really genuinely is a responsive site that you're working on or dealing with, you've got little or nothing to do. But what I would advise that you do is look at GA and look at your behavioural analysis data, so see how people act and perform and how they move around your site and different devices, and see if there's kind of parity. You're not looking for exactly the same kind of metrics because they're different devices, but kind of set reasonable performance expectations. And think about, is there huge room for improvement? Does the data say that perhaps our responsive page or organisation isn't quite right? Is the running order of the column layout not quite right? Is there something just not working there? Is the speed completely out of whack? Is there still a little work to be done? So in general, once you do that check, just make sure that's okay. And if you are, then you might not have anything to do, which is fantastic. However, if you're using a dynamic serving arrangement, we're using different, you know, different URLs, so some other sort of arrangement, but we've got ample limits, and then there are some considerations around the hierarchies between how we refer to our URLs, then this is big. The first major area that we're going to talk about is HTTP2, and the reason that I want to talk about HTTP2 just a little bit, because I know in the session after lunch, Jono is going to go into a lot of detail about this. So kind of, this is like the lunges, this is the warm-up for that, because that gets really technical, and lots of fun. John's watching me now, and I feel awkward. But yeah, so we're just going to go into this lightly. HTTP2, as the name suggests, is the next version of HTTP. There are a number of differences with HTTP2 that afford for a much more improved, much faster, much more progressive web experience, particularly as it pertains to mobile. One of those, and perhaps one of the most critical differences, is to do with multiplexing. This is a really good resource, Commandment there, which is linked to, I'll share the slides so you can access this and learn a little bit more about multiplexing. But it's a technology that's been around like for a long time to do with like telephony systems and things like that. But it kind of, so imagine you're making a phone call, or you don't need to make a phone call, but how data over telegraph lines can be transferred from a number of branches into a single line, and then the other end splits out. It's that kind of technology. So taking all of that data and almost, I don't know, concatenating it into a single piece of data transferred through one TCP connection, which speeds things up immensely, as you can imagine. Some other differences here. So another kind of major difference which you'll hear a lot about is head of line. So if you imagine that HTTP1 acts as like a queuing system, or you've got a complaint, you want to take something back, and you're at the front of the queue, and everybody else wants to complain, and they're behind me. So rather than having that sort of queuing system in HTTP1, HTTP2 parallel. Oh, not multiplex, that shouldn't say multiplex there, that should say parallelized, they're different things. Apologies. Another major difference is rather than having my priority queue, which is a sort of educated guess based on the client performance and that sort of thing, there's more kind of intelligence behind how things are prioritised, and it's to do by type and context. But, and most importantly, particularly because of mobile, is that queue, rather than being on the client, so rather than on my phone, this queuing occurring and me waiting in the 3G area for my content to be delivered, that queue is actually browser to server. So there are smarter, faster things happening there. And finally, on my header in my kind of server connection, keep alive needs to be stated with HTTP 1.1, but it's enabled by default with 2. I mean, there's loads more, as I say. Definitely stick around and listen to John's presentation to go into this a little bit deeper. We're just scratching the surface for now. But one of the things that I think, not criticisms, perhaps, often overlooked when it comes to speed, and I'm going to mention this, and particularly with HTTP2, is that almost a dismissive attitude to front-end optimizations, because of all of the improvements that are now made and the accelerations from kind of parallelized requests, getting rid of this head of line issue, front-end almost seems like pointless, or like you're kind of working on tiny margins, and you're not. You're really not. There's a couple of things that you can do that can still accelerate your performance and speed drastically. Image optimization is always possibly in like the top 3 to 5 biggest step change drivers that we see. And I know it's not as cool or as impressive or as funky a thing to do, but it works, so who cares? We've also, another thing that I would recommend is operating within Google's Rails framework, which I'll cover in a second. But in terms of image optimization, I just really wanted to stress that by showing you a genuine, real example. So in this case, this is a real client site. This is a snippet from their dashboard. We decided that spriting would be the best option to optimize their images. It wasn't already in place. And we made this change around there. And since then, that was the drug. You can see it better in daily data, but there's a shelf effect in terms of performance on revenue, because of course if it's faster, people are going to stick around longer and they're likely to convert, etc., etc., etc. So definitely worth looking at. Just to address some criticism around, like, oh, these front-end things aren't worth doing, is there a need if we're multiplexing, parallelizing, why do we need to do image spriting? This is a really good resource, Octo blog. I love it because it's kind of quite, I can understand it, I'm not a developer, but they write in a really approachable way, they test everything. So actually, no, that's not true, didn't beat, but as you can see here, so the blue line is HTTP1, and the red line, this is where I needed the laser, the red line is HTTP2. As you can see, although HTTP2 still beats HTTP1 in terms of speed, over here, 11 seconds. This is the percentage number of images sprited, for example. So we've got the sprite set, if you like, and here we've got like 10% of the set sprited, and 90% obviously not, etc., etc., right over to 100% sprited. And as you can see, although 2 still beats 1, both are going in the right direction, so it's still definitely, absolutely worth doing these little front-end things. So Rail is an acronym for response, animation, idle, load. I think it sounds a little bit like a drama group, doesn't it? Hannah's if Google says aim for these performance measures, I'm totally going to do that, because I think that might be a bit of a hint. So in terms of response, we're aiming to get to around 100 milliseconds. Animation, now by animation we're not talking about like, you know, auto-playing, spinning, moving, and stuff like that. We're talking about simple, like, fundamental, functional animations, like touch and drag, or scrolling effects. Final time with right, so this is quite interesting. We can use this to complete deferred work. This becomes more interesting when we think about the role of service workers, but we'll go on that a bit later. But also keep preloads to a minimum, and in terms of load, full load, we want to be delivering at around 1,000 milliseconds or less. But can't stress this enough. Everything, the whole part of the creation process, and we're talking about sites, optimizing sites, writing content, optimizing images. Remember, this is a battery-powered world now. So everything we do, we really need to think about that, particularly when it comes to resource. So point 4, talent handling. Again, make no assumptions. I know again another moment, but you really need to do a tag audit and check particularly if different, but also if dynamic. Do tags just fly off at a certain kind of resolution or a certain kind of agent handling? Tag Assistant's out for this, pretty straightforward, I'm sure everyone's heard of this, but it allows us to kind of analyse and compare. It also gives you suggestions to fix, identifies what's wrong. 9 times out of 10, there's a duplicate analytics count somewhere, I'm sure we'll head that one. Second here, oh actually, sorry, nothing, same kind as before, that previous little diagram I showed you, another one of those top step changes and speed improvements. If you've got a lot of tags on a lot of pages, can't stress this enough, the speed improvement that you'll get from moving to GTM, Google Tag Manager, and taking all of those tags out of the inline code will again give you a massive step change boost to performance and conversion rate, etc., etc. So all good stuff. The next section is structured data. Really, really important for mobile index and understanding and comprehension of entities. Reason being, we're not going to put as much of the words on the page, so we need to be a little bit smarter about how we use what we have available, being the structured data markup that explains what's in it. Second reason is for this. Now this is all like, it's a year old. A year ago, 20% of mobile searches were voice search. A year ago. So it's going to be higher, don't know what, but that's quite phenomenal. To really understand voice search and how to get the best out of voice search, I would be well served by making sure I've got structured data everywhere, which we can put into GTM and handle that there, so we're not adding stuff to inline code. But, so this is a lovely example. Oh, you can play along with the films. That Star Wars isn't a film, not in '98 anyway, but you knew that, didn't you? So featured snippets, another really, really useful optimization, way to progress our search. Works obviously in desktop as well as mobile, but extremely important in mobile because you'll see them more often. Because why wouldn't we want to just answer the question quickly in the mobile SERP right there, offers a better, faster experience 100% of the time. How do we get there? It's really simple, so simple. Answer the fucking question, be somewhere in the top 3 most relevant results. And this one, like, you don't have to do this. There isn't an exact correlation, you don't have to use structured data, but generally most of the featured snippet results have some form of structured data. So list tags, charts, etc., etc. And then we get nice results like that. Oh, I spoke actually this time last year at Brighton SEO with this guy, Rob Bucci, and his company Stat is a massive data tool, and they analyse something like, I think, a million odd results to get that kind of data. So just that out there. So 6, service workers. So what I mean by checking service workers is checking if we have any service workers currently running on the site, on the mobile experience. If not, is there opportunity? Is there anything we can do, or anything we can benefit from with the introduction of service workers? So, what are they? Service workers seek to solve this problem, the biggest problem with mobile web, which is no connectivity. And it's it's a complete replacement to app cache, which didn't work particularly well anyway. It is interdependent of the web page and can run completely separately to it. But in terms of what that means or how that can work, it enables your web page or your web offering to behave or look or offer experiences akin to a native app. To all intents and purposes, you may not be able to tell the difference from the front end. So, for example, here's one nice picture that I stole from the lovely Hreflang, who's written up quite a bit more on this particular service workers and the impact of progressive web apps or the usage of progressive web apps. What we can do here is the service worker can often bypass the local cache, go straight to the server, and serve push notifications, as I say, independent of the web experience of the web page. There's a little bit more there about the API. The Mozilla guide I find a little bit better than the Google, more useful, let's say, than the Google guide, which is a little bit more further reading. 7, yeah, I've lost my count because of that whole 10 issue. 7. Okay, so checking out our URL hierarchy, which only applies obviously if we have a hierarchy, if we have an ecosystem, if we're fully responsive, we've got no HTML pages, but if we have an international setup with separate TLGs, CCLTLGs, whatever it might be, if we've got any subdoms, if we do have anything else like that in the mix, we might need to just rethink like what's our canonization process. Which URL version is the canonical, that needs to flip. And what's our alternate therefrom? So just kind of working through the logic flow in terms of that hierarchical layout of this architecture. When it comes to Hreflang as well, if you've got Hreflang mark in line on your pages, then just check that if you're serving dynamically, does it appear on all versions? Does it appear on alternate URLs? In sitemaps, does it apply? Have you got it applied to all of your different URLs? I checked this with Gianluca, and apparently, whilst the use of alternate canonical should infer the value of Hreflang, so the alternate value that's inferred via canonical or via alternate, I tell you take that for granted because there's really going to about this. And let's just develop the brace that anyway. 8 and 9 are kind of sort of closely related, so I'll kind of whiz through them. I think there's a little bit of danger in comparing your desktop version to your mobile version, because it works on this idea of forms, that there's a perfect form in a way. And there isn't a perfect form. It's not like desktop is perfect and mobile is deviation from. So a behavioural line isn't as clear cut. Everything needs context, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Although it is a fact that there is like a 9.5% higher bounce rate on mobile. There are factors that influence that, of course. I mean, speed is a massive one of those. But secondly, how do we treat the content experience? How do we treat the user with the mobile pages? Are we like taking the desktop version and squeezing all of that and saying, oh, we just put that in a nice long column? No, not at all. It does not need to be the same, but squeezed down and just laid out to work on a mobile phone. What we want to do is we want to offer an equivalent experience. So not the same, but the same effect for the different device. So, use our words efficiently. Natural language, actually I didn't mention it, but natural language, again, with voice search is really, really critical. So think about how people ask questions and how do we answer them using really strict back plain English. And if not mobile first, then it needs to be mobile smart design. So being sensitive to the layout and the orientation. And finally, and as I say, this is interlinked, and that is the journey experience. What is the point of the page? So first off, obviously we need to provide the user with journeys and functionality to complete their priority tasks. That's just a given, but I think we tend to lose sight of that when thinking about optimizing for mobile or mobile design or a mobile version, because again, we've got this mentality of a desktop version as the perfect form, and the mobile is a deviation from that, so we need to kind of switch that way of thinking. One thing that we do when we're analysing, and this is a snippet of a UX review, if you like, from a particular client, an e-commerce client who sells trainers, is we analyse, if not all, I mean this one's easy because they only sell a certain type of trainer and there aren't millions of them. If I was like working on the Foot Locker website or ASOS, we couldn't do this, we couldn't sit and score to every single page. So you have to work on templates. But what we do is we use a simple scoring system and like a simple assessment, thinking about, can I do what this page is supposed to do on a mobile phone? Revolutionary. But it gives you kind of, comparative data is perfect, not perfect data, but useful data. But it gives you a simple scoring system. I'm not saying everyone needs to use this. CP is click or push. So can I click or push it off the point with the whole thing? So that just gives us a kind of idea of how a page has the potential to perform. Okay, so those are our 9 things that we're working on. HTTPS, we're done with that. The web's not going to work if we're not there. So the 9 things that we've got on our schedule for the rest of 2017 to make sure that we're completely ready. Some of these are good practice already, some of them baked in to newer sites. Some of them as we're working with clients on persuading them to it's time for a redesign, and we'll bake it in right now. And finally, if you're ready, here are the 5 films. Ta-da! And thank you.